do you think it's anything to do with a certain religion, do you think?
No,
Is it anything
is
like
it?
that?
No, it's
No,
more to do
no.
with a kind of a drug, isn't it? It's a drug.
Yeah, well, those that take it ought to be ashamed of themselves.
According to The Sun, there were thousands of empty ecstasy wrappers littering the floor of the 250-foot-long hangar.
Drugs, sex, sensation.
Some newspapers have called acid house music a sinister and evil cult which lures young people into drug taking. The message is certainly getting across.
The organisers kept the location secret until the very last moment, which was the main reason, according to the papers, why there were so few police here and they were unable to act.
Drug-crazed kids, some as young as 12, boogied for 8 hours yesterday at Britain's biggest ever ecstasy bash.
The party took place here, infiltrated by reporters from the Mail and the Sun.
There's meant to be a drugs-related craze.
What do you know about acid house music?
It must affect the brain in some way.
Unless it's just the music that does it.
All them lights flashing don't do you any good either, do it? I wouldn't even go in the pub where them lights are.
Oh, no.
They drive you mad, don't they?
Welcome to the 88 podcast with yours truly, Wayne Anthony. And on today's podcast, we've got an absolute legend, an iconic musician from the scene, particularly from the UK. It's the legendary keyboard wizard himself, Adamski. Welcome to the podcast, mate.
Hi, Wayne. Hi, podcast listeners.
Hey, so it's so good to have you on the show, mate. It really is, you know.
Thank
because
you.
The thing is, when we talk about 1988, 1989, we talk about all of the artists that made that time special for us all. You know, you were homegrown talent. And at a time when everyone was kind of looking at the United States, they were looking at Chicago and they were looking at, you know, United States. You were our guy. You were our pin-up lad, you know.
Yeah, I think the media were looking for someone to sort of represent the whole, you know, be a face of the scene.
Sure.
Because it was kind of faceless. You know, that people didn't really know what the artists looked like. I mean, I even met some of them, but when I was at a party, it still felt to me like the music was coming from outer space, and it wasn't like these normal human beings making the music in Chicago or Detroit or Belgium or wherever. And
Sure.
But it was a very, you know, it was kind of an anonymous thing. The DJs were playing the music, and it was no one was like gawping at the DJs in those days. They were just having a good time dancing and with their friends.
And you're right. And because it was that electronic music being made at home in bedrooms, it wasn't like a band getting a band together.
Yeah.
And so obviously a lot of these guys, you know, they're bedroom DJs or producers, and they wasn't necessarily ready to be standing front and center.
I mean, they kind of made me a poster boy.
And big time,
I went along with it because, you know,
why wouldn't you?
I'm easily flattered, but
no, mate.
It wasn't really my intention. I was just wanted to play music in the parties I love to go to, and it kind of just, that's the path it took me. I ended up being, you know, because I used to just plug in my gear in the DJ console straight into the disco DJ mixer, you know, whoever was playing Fabio or Paul Oakenfold or whatever. I'd just go into the console and plug my stuff in and take over from the DJ like another DJ would with his box of records, and play for an hour and a half or whatever. Actually, I've got no idea how long I used to play for. My whole sense of time is just completely warped. But,
especially when you're in that crowd and everyone's like cheering and going insane.
Yeah, but then as I got more popular and more known, you know, promoters wanted to start putting me on a sort of platform with, you know, even by October of 1989, they gave me pyrotechnics, and I was jumping out of my skin jumping out of my skin with fireworks going off, and I'm just standing there trying to concentrate on operating my sequencer and my sampler and my drum machine, and there's these like boom bang, and I'm like, Jesus.
And at the same time you're feeling the love and the empathy as well, aren't you? You know?
Yeah.
And then you got these shock factors going on.
I mean, it's better than guns going.
Yeah.
Which, but I did have a great time. It just went really quick. It happened really quick, and it shot by really quick. I mean, life.
It did. I remember, like, you know, at the height of it, I remember. I mean, I've got the newspaper clippings myself that I cut out from the newspapers at the time, and I can't remember if it was the Sun or the newspaper. And there was a big article. You know, you took up half the page. DJ Adamski, 150 grand to play at Disneyland. Do you remember that one?
Oh yeah, but they made that up.
I know, it's been, yeah.
Since then, there has been raves at Disneyland, I think.
Sure.
You know, apparently,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they
And
just,
DJs have got more than 150 grand.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, like, you know, Paul and
grand.
Carl, you know, he's like on like 7 figures now, Carl, for a set.
Yeah, like 150 grand is like peanuts.
Yeah, I think like the last, you know, can you imagine? I think the last
get
Space,
out of bed for less than
I think like the closing of Space, he got like $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the word, you know. But I mean, but then I remember there was a picture of you, and then there was, because was that a record company spin, or was that just the media doing their spin?
I think the record, I don't know who they sort of
it was just
egg
spinning
each other on. I mean, the record company I was signed to, MCA, they used to say stuff that used to kind of get me into trouble personally and out on the scene, and my relationships with other artists, because they make shit up like, oh, Adamski's producing the Pet Shop Boys, just because the Pet Shop Boys came to a couple of my shows and were like friendly to me. The press department at the record company would get that and run with it. Then like Neil Tennant would be irked with me because he think that I mean, he was the editor of Smash Hits, so he should know better. But
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was. That's how.
Wow.
That's how they. You know, he had all his connections.
Yeah.
But
and it's just for people who might not know, that was an industry magazine at the time, and it was a powerful magazine.
I mean, I think at this point he was no longer the editor; he was being a pop star.
He was like, Pet Shop Boys.
He should know that, you know, major labels, press departments do this stuff, and he didn't have to.
But maybe that was his. But maybe that was his press department pretending.
I don't know.
You know, like you got a beef with him, and it's like, no, dude, that was like some, you know, intern at the office. No, I don't care. You know,
he changed his tune with me out in the.
Oh, okay. Well, that's different.
They were very friendly with me, and then all of a sudden, they weren't friendly with me, and I, you know, unless I'd done something like insulted them when I was drunk and forgot, or something. I don't know why they. No, I mean, I did tend to. I had a bit of a bad habit of doing that, of insulting people when I was drunk, completely forgetting, and then I'd see them a couple of weeks later and be like, "Hey, how are you?" And they'd be like, "Get away from me."
But I remember when going like back to the beginning, I remember meeting you in Chelsea at Natalie's place, your former partner, and myself and Andrew. You remember Andrew from Genesis? Yeah, of course.
Well, the funny thing that I forgot when I was talking to you the other day, but Andrew, when I was 17 and I just moved to London from the sticks, and I lived in Homerton, Hackney, and I lived in this little road, and on the corner, Andy's family ran the offie, and that was my local offie, and I was like a budding out. You know what I was doing at the time? I was busking in Leicester Square, and I'd go to Leicester Square with my acoustic guitar, play music until I'd play until I plucked up enough courage to buy like a can of special brew, and then carry on playing till I made
Fare
enough
home
money
or something.
to get well,
to
10
smoke or
and
food.
hedges,
Yeah.
and then in the end I'd have about £6, and I'd get the bus back to Hackney, and then go in Andy's shop
No way.
and buy some bread and cheese and beans and a couple of cans of special brew. So I used to see him like every day.
What a
and then,
small world.
I know. And then 2 years later, well, 3 years, but it's those days, years seemed a lot longer. Shortly after that, he's like promoting this like massive parties, and I'm like kind of known for providing entertainments at these events.
Right.
And who would have thought, this
it's nuts.
guy with his acoustic guitar, and I just thought, oh, he's a nice, family, son working in his family's shop. Yeah, of course he was.
He still is. He's still alive.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not still working in his family's shop.
No, it's a restaurant now.
Oh, is it? Yeah, that area's been gentrified, isn't it?
Yeah. But so when you met up with Andrew again, Andrew, for those who don't know, was my partner in Genesis. But when you met up again later in years in Chelsea, did you recognise that was Andrew from the off license?
I think I probably didn't, because it would have been too surreal. But he told me. I remember him telling me that, you used to come in my dad's shop.
No way, dude.
Yeah.
So I mean, I remember at that time, because I remember we came up the house, and I remember you were playing us some of your music on the cassette box. You know, and you were so quiet, and then like a couple of weeks later, we saw you on stage. And then it was almost like you just come completely to life. It was almost like this is where you're meant to be.
Well, I was still. I mean, had the safety of being behind my machines. I wasn't really. It wasn't like I was.
But you're still solo though.
Yeah, it's true. Well, sometimes I had my MC.
Yeah, you had Chester.
Yeah,
he was great. Yeah,
he was great. He was my flatmate, and it was great when he came along and support. It was great to have a mate along with me, like supporting me and
for sure,
geeing me up to the crowd. But sometimes he didn't come, sometimes he did. It was like however he felt like.
Yeah, because obviously he was going through his own, journey of self-discovery as well, as we all were.
It was all random, like that. No, we didn't have stylists and choreographers and songwriters and anybody saying what to do. It was just went from one to the next. Like I remember playing in the dungeons in Leabridge Road, and just turning up because I had my gear in the car because I'd been playing at some other club or rave or something, and like me and my manager Phil going, oh, we fancy going to the dungeon, but we've got the gear in the car. I don't want to leave it outside. Turning up at the dungeon, saying to the bouncer, "Oh, I'm the PA," and them going, "Oh, yeah, all right then." And you go, walking in, going up to the DJ, and saying, "I'm the PA. I'm on in like 20 minutes or something," and they're like, "Yeah, okay, cool." And like me plugging in and doing a set, and you can never, ever do that now. Likewise, in Ibiza in 1988, going to the opening of Amnesia, and just because I had a like bright green and orange jacket on and stuff, and going up to the, girl with the guest list thing, going, "Oh, can we come in? Can me and my friends come in?" And they're like, "See, you look good. Come on in." And like
fantastic.
Now it's all computerized and like passport control and metal detectors, and you could I guess they've got metal detectors actually, I don't know, maybe exaggerating, but it's all a completely different world. I'm not bemoaning the loss of the old world. I'm just very grateful that I was alive to experience that world, because our generation, we live on the cusp of this, the information technology revolution, which is like just as much as the industrial revolution or the agricultural revolution, you know, the space age.
And we saw those changes, you know, all the way from the space age to miners' strike, and we saw all of that.
We straddled the it's like the humanity's taken a massive shift, and we've straddled it. And I think actually acid house culture was very symbolic of that change. It was I also think acid house culture was like the pinnacle of pop culture. You know, it started with like Elvis and Little Richard and those like rock and roll icons, pioneers in the mid 50s, and it went up and up and up, and it went really fast. Like the advances, the progression of music, how quickly it changed. Yeah, and like styles and different. But by the 80s, there was like a new kind of whole new scene and a whole new look and a whole new sound. Like every 6 weeks when I was at school, it was just like two-tone, synth pop, psychobilly, street sounds, electro compilations.
And we did them all, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. It was like it was a brilliant time to be at school, and all the
because 80s, I think we're roughly the same age. Your 60s was you born, yeah?
Yeah, 67. Me.
Yeah, 66. So yeah, we see that journey, you know, and you know, 1 minute we was all, you know, doing break dancing and beat bopping and doing the robots, and then the next thing it's like reggae and soul, and then electro. We had so many different delights. We were quite lucky in that respect, wasn't we?
Oh, really lucky. So I thank the universe to have just lived through that culture, and it still excites me when I'm making music now. I'm just channeling all those things from my growing up, and
so many influences.
Like, I think the acid house was like the apex of it. It couldn't get any better. Because I mean, there's still been great, you know, artists coming along since. Some of these girls, like these super big DJs now around the world, like Nina Kravitz and Charlotte DeWitt and stuff. They weren't even born when we were like making and playing acid house or techno or whatever you call it, and they weren't even born, but it's still a fresh thing to them. Like other genres of music haven't lasted this long, really, not like that as a, but then
for sure
when it all went off, and it was just before everyone had a mobile phone and was, you know, a few years before selfies and all this, it was, you know, like about 5 people out of 5,000 people in the rave had a mobile phone. I had one. I had a Motorola. It was about that big.
Yeah.
And I
the car was it the car one that goes in the back of the boot of the car? Yeah.
Well, I had a charger, right? And if you charged it up, it would last an hour and a half. And I had to take a rucksack around with me with the charger in it because it was so big. And then I'd go to someone's office or wherever, or some mate's flat, and I go, can I plug my phone in? And I have to charge it all up and then put it back in the rucksack, and it was mental. But,
and they were really heavy as well. That battery bit, it was heavy because what you used to do, because I had one in the car, and what you'd do is you'd basically, the bottom of it, which was a big heavy battery, it was heavy, you know, you know, it was heavy weight. And that would slide into your boot, and then the handset, you just kind of went into the car and just put it into the car. But the mad thing about it in those days is that no one would actually call me on that phone because it was like calling the States, you know?
I was on a plane once. I mean, like a domestic flight. I was flying to Glasgow or something, and the phone rang. And someone rang me. I couldn't believe it. I was sitting on a plane talking to. They don't work on the plane anymore. I don't know how that happened. It's probably going through like the actual like plane's communication system or something. But because then they used to say on EasyJet and stuff, you know, you can't have your phone on, and and I heard from people that did an EasyJet training course, the reason for that is it doesn't interfere with the communication system. It's because if the plane's going down, they want to have the full attention of all the passengers, so they're not like scrolling through Facebook or something. Like they're
just
there
texting.
Like, sitting, getting ready to sit in brace
Last
position because the plane's about to go into the side of a mountain.
But let me take you back to to that. No, that's okay, mate, because it's technology, and this was what we had to do with at the time, you know. But let me take you back to that opening night at Amnesia in Ibiza. I mean, what was that like for an experience? Did you play there?
The first year I went, no.
Okay.
I went in '88.
Yeah.
As a punter, as I said, I blagged it in because I had a fancy jacket on, and then I in a million years dreams beyond my wildest dreams, didn't think that a year later I would be like playing there alongside Alfredo, who was considered then, I guess, to be the most important DJ in the world.
For sure.
Certainly the most influential.
He was superstar DJ level without, being the humblest of guys.
In ID magazine or The Face, one of those, they called him DJ of the decade, because really, I mean, he wasn't making the music, it was a lot of DJs in America and around the world, but predominantly in Chicago, New York and Detroit, making the tunes. But he was the one that kind of played it in such a way that it gained its popularity in Europe. And Amnesia was like the epicenter of the whole scene, in 1989.
And he was the ringmaster.
Yeah. And he played every night, all night. It wasn't like, 2 years later, they had like 20 DJs playing there, It was kind of like family. It was like a cult, but
but not a cult.
He'd have quite a lot of tunes that you knew you were going to hear, not in which order, but then he'd always throw these things in that would be like, wow. And it was just all different kinds of music, but the thread that held it all together was like electronic, house music and techno. And 88 was a lot of acid house, and but I mean, by 1989, the elite crowd, the sort of boys own and that, was like, oh, acid is so passé, and they couldn't say acid. And it was
to them it was already dead.
My friend, it wasn't dead at all.
No, it was just beginning for us.
It still isn't 32 years later. But
I agree.
But my mate Ricardo DeForce, who sadly passed away about 7 years ago, he was the MC at Amnesia, and he was Alfredo's friend and my friend. I'd met him. He was with the Shock Sound System, which is Ashley Beadle's old crew, who I met in '88.
Legendary crew.
And then I'd met Ricky with that lot, Ashley and Dean and Paul, and I'd met him then. And then when I turned up with my keyboard and drum machine in Amnesia in '89, I turned up for the sound check. There's a familiar face from London, because I didn't really know anyone there either. I'd only just met Alfredo a few days before, and he'd said, in London, I'd been introduced to him by Paul Oakenfold, and he'd said, please come and play at the opening night of my club. And it is, Alfredo said to me that, in his opinion, that was the best party ever. So I feel so honored and privileged to have played at who was considered one of the most influential DJs ever, the best party ever, and I was a part of it, and I love.
Yeah, mate,
excellent.
excellent.
I've had the life I've had, and I in the old days I'd have gone, no, I think they like me, but now I can say I smashed it.
You did smash it, mate. Absolutely.
I've grown out of being all like, oh, I'm humble, and I smashed it. And anyway, so
mate, you smashed it, because listen, mate, right? Before we get to that Ibiza 1989, was that the opening party? So what was that, June or something?
Yeah. Or
but
maybe
before
May.
we get to that,
maybe,
yeah,
I'll
like
tell you
May
what, it was a couple of days after that big biology that was in the field, the first open air rave that was in the big field. That was one of the best parties ever.
Yeah, I was there.
And it was a couple of days after that. And
you played there as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did 3 sets.
Yes, mate.
And, I had to and then came back into London that Sunday evening, and I loved that because the News of the World paper had come out with all this front page scandal about this party, and it was still going on. And we just left there. Me and my friends, we just left that party, come into London, and it was all the newspapers, people having their breakfast. But then I went to Confusion, that party that was in Shaftesbury's on Shaftesbury Avenue.
Nikki Tracks, big love to Nikki.
Yeah, big love to Nikki. I used to also go there in '88. That was in a place called Bill Stickers in Greek Street, I think, one of those streets off Soho Square. And I used to go there, and Robert Owens would be singing live, and he'd just be sitting behind the decks, and Kid Bachelor was DJing. And just singing live, and I used to go there with my mate Jimmy Polo, who's from Chicago, and around that scene. I know I keep jumping, but I remember things, and then I don't want to forget to say them.
Totally, just say it, just go with it.
So, because I had to get to, I was booked to play in the opening night of Amnesia a few days after that big biology party, and I hadn't slept for like 3 nights by this point. And I was getting the train, I couldn't afford to go with like anybody to help me. So I had all my equipment, all my luggage and everything to turn up and find Alfredo. Basically, I had an arrangement to meet him in Amnesia car park in the afternoon of the day of the opening party. But in those days, talking about no one having cell phones, in Ibiza, no one even had a landline.
Yeah.
It was like, if you didn't turn up at
it was a nightmare
at this time. And and
I know exactly what you mean. The amount of times I've had to meet people in Ibiza at a certain place at a certain time before the phones, it was a nightmare.
Yeah. But somehow it kind of happened. It was still, the universe would like guide us. But I basically, I'd get on the train at Victoria to go to Gatwick, and then I'd wake up in Brighton, and I'd be like, oh no, I'm in Brighton. And then I'd get back on the train and wake back up in fucking Victoria. And I just kept missing Gatwick. And in the end, I missed my plane. I went to Gatwick, and you couldn't buy a ticket at the airport either. I had to call my manager and say, can you buy me a ticket? And calling from a pay phone in Gatwick. And then I kept for about 12 hours, I was just sleeping around on the plastic chairs in Gatwick Airport. And then I would get woken up by airport security going like, what are you doing here? We keep seeing you around, this weird little
and
rave,
your brightly coloured clothes as well.
Kid. Yeah. And I probably had, my little skinny sparrow drug legs with my shorts on and stuff, just looked like a little weirdo and then in the end, actually I went back to London because I had to wait another 24 hours, but still, nevertheless, I somehow made it turned up in and met Alfredo in Amnesia car park and did my sound check, and there was Ricardo De Force, who was a friendly, familiar face from London, which was great. And then we became really good friends. He's the he was, God rest his soul, the godfather of my daughter Bluebell, Natalie, and my daughter. And he went on to work with the KLF, who we were also hanging out with in Ibiza that summer, who I also knew from before Acid House, when they were the Justified Ancients of Moo Moo, and they were making these mad mashups with ABBA and the Sex Pistols and Scottish rapping over the like mental music. Excellent. Really challenging culture and art, you know.
You know, your head's like missing from the screen. Yeah, there you go.
I forgot I had a head.
You was like a giant, you know.
Yeah. So Ricky went on to he was on 3 a.m. Eternal, the classic KLF track, and also their big #1 hit with Tammy Wynette. I just loved that the KLF, you know, people would just do mental things, take big chances. Like, who would make a rave record with like Tammy Wynette, you know, a country and western singer singing about, you know, the Justified Ancients of Moo Moo and the Illuminati and stuff, and a rapper from London like talking about fishing in the rivers of life, and it got to #1, and they dressed up as ice cream cones and like threw a dead sheep into the lobby of the Brits Awards, and
classic.
You know, all these kinds of things. Now people just
they wanted to originally throw the £1 million just in Liverpool Street or something, didn't they? But they wouldn't allow them to throw the £1 million, so that's why they burnt it, wasn't it? You know, it's like,
they
okay,
burnt £1 million, and then they got sued by the Bank of England, another 150 grand for defacing the Queen's notes. But they also, before they did that, I was reminded, reading the Adventures in Wonderland, Cheryl Garrett's account of acid house culture and rave culture, that they were paid, they insisted on one of the raves and being paid in Scottish pound notes or Scottish £10 notes, their fee was £1,000 or something. Because one, you know, Bill Drummond from the KLF is Scottish and proud, he wears a kilt and stuff, and they insisted on being paid in Scottish notes, a rave in like Essex or something, and then they just went up onto the
stage or whatever.
The stage, just threw the money out into the audience.
Excellent.
Like, threw their whole fee out into the audience. It was so mental, that whole period of. That's what I mean. It was the pinnacle of pop culture. Like, you know, since then there's been a few. You know, obviously there was like drum and bass came along and stuff, but that was kind of these, I see them all as offshoots of that, you know, as amazing and, you know, influential as all these latter things, but nothing quite got that same excitement as when it was fresh, because, you know, then all obviously like the major, you know, the BBC got involved, and the corporations got involved in what was really essentially underground culture before. And even, I don't know, like I said, I'm not bemoaning the loss of how it was. I'm just saying how grateful I am to having been there. And for younger people, I'm sure younger people feel the same levels of excitement about different things.
About their own movements, and that's all we're doing here. And this is obviously as well part of the reasons of doing the podcast. It's just like, okay, we realize and we acknowledge what everybody else did within their own popular cultures, and whether or not that continued on for the rest of their lives, we are just trying to document and record what our period and what we remember. And so,
the funny thing
not
is,
discounting anyone else's experiences, we are highlighting our own.
I mean, funnily enough, in '89, I also got to know Mick Jones from The Clash. Okay. Because I toured supporting Big Audio Dynamite. They kindly kind of brought me on board supporting them and a British tour, even though I was not really what the Clash also before Big Audio Dynamite. You know, they famously used to bring acts, you know, like they bring like rappers in the early 80s that you know weren't, you know, they rubbed up their punk rock audience the wrong way, but they would challenge their audience by bringing them new things.
Sure.
You know, like Suicide, who are like the godfathers of electronic music, that were doing it in the mid 70s. They even an inspired Kraftwerk. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. The Clash got Suicide supporting them, and you know their audience were just like throwing bottles at them because they were just had a synthesizer and a guy singing, and everyone thought, no, it has to be like blokes with guitars and drums like sweating and like, you know. But anyway, I got to know Mick Jones. But when I used to see Mick Jones in the raves, he was only like 30, but for me, I was like 20 or something. And I just think, what's he doing there? I think like these guys were from a kind of bygone era, like the Victorians. Punk was only 10 years before, but it seemed like eons ago, and it was just weird. That was just my perception. And I think, and Pete Shelley from the Buzzcocks, I saw him too, and a few other of these old faces, but they weren't old. They were like 30, which now my daughter's 29. It's like, it's just nuts. And then by the end of 89, I remember I was out at some party, and these guys, Spike and Neville, that used to do a party called the Hug Club, which is one of the seminal acid ecstasy parties or whatever.
I think they used to do Legends as well, didn't they?
Yeah, a lot of things.
Yeah, the original parties at Legends in Burlington Street. I'm sure it was Spike and Neville.
Okay, probably.
Yeah.
But they had a do in Holloway Road. I can't remember where I was celebrating New Year's Eve, but they had a do in Holloway Road on New Year's Eve 89, and they were like, do you want to come and do a set? And I was like, okay. And I was with Mick Jones, and we went back to my flat in York Way, where I lived with Daddy Chester. We went back and got my gear, and Mick Jones is carrying my gear downstage, and I'm thinking, fucking hell, Mick Jones from the Clash is my roadie. It was just so surreal, like, honestly. And then and I think at that party, I'm pretty sure now I'm thinking of it, that Carl Cox was playing. He was, yeah. And God, these memories keep one thing makes me think of another. Like about 100 paragraphs ago, 100 sentences ago, I was trying to say that about Amnesia being the epicenter of the whole culture, how important it was, and how important Alfredo was.
Hugely important.
As a pioneer, as a tastemaker, as an influencer.
And again, it was such an eclectic mix of music. It wasn't one style of music. It wasn't just house. It was everything you could possibly think of. This guy played.
And people, from all across the genres, all across the years. You know, it would be 1 minute it would be in Aretha Franklin, then it would be back into some banging underground, drugged out Chicago acid house track. Then it would be like the Gypsy Kings, and then it would be like Kate Bush, and then it would be a really beautiful, uplifting, soulful New York garage track. I mean, it wasn't as chop and change as that. I mean, he made it just flow like an amazing kind of story every night, all night, every night. Him, apart from when I would kind of interrupt, do a set in the middle of it all, because that year I played the opening and the closing parties.
That's big, mate. Listen, that in itself is an honor. You played the opening and closing parties. That is definitely an honor, mate.
Yeah, I mean, there's some on testpressing.org. There's some footage of, I don't think it's either the opening or closing party, but it's that summer. It's one of the parties, and it's footage of just people in the crowd and stuff. And the soundtrack is me playing live in the background, and it was miscredited to Alfredo before, but I think they corrected it. But the thing is, that summer, like, how exciting for a 20-year-old guy who the year before had been totally in awe of Alfredo and all of it. You know, it was like a world beyond the edge of the universe. And then I just going backwards and forwards all summer, playing at whether it be Sunrise 5000 or Energy at that film studio, you know, one of the most legendary, that legendary party where I was playing, you know, alongside Paul.
We all speak about it,
Jazzy M, and then flying back to Ibiza, staying there for a week or two, doing a few sets in Amnesia, then flying back. Cool. Used to go to Space. Space opened in 1989 too, and it was like there would be, honestly, it was after hours. It used to start 6 or 7 in the morning or something. There would be about 100 people there sitting around on bean bags, and about 30 people on the dance floor. You're talking
decks
about
on the bar.
Talking about Carl Cox getting paid $1 million to play there. You could probably buy the whole place and all its contents in 1989 for about 50 grand. And then you know, it just grew and grew and grew. To be honest, I found the place a bit like a shopping mall. In the last time I played there, it was about 10 years ago, and I played on the terrace, and I thought, oh, that must just be that old bit where people used to sit outside on the wall and lie around in the sun. And it's about 2,000 people, and it had a roof on. It was just, I mean,
it's nuts, mate.
But then again, if you're young, that must be super exciting. But then
I remember one of the most exciting things. One of the exciting things of being on that terrace as well, Adam, was that, you know, the music will be going, and obviously it's quite loud. And for those who might not know, Space is situated right next to the airport. And every now and again, an aeroplane would go over. This was particularly in the 90s. It would go over in time with the music. And then everyone would acknowledge it. So this aeroplane would go over just, you know, like just in between a song, just right in the groove, right on time.
A breakdown or something.
It would just like shoo. And then everyone would just go nuts, you know. Great times. So Space Ibiza. The terrace. I mean, we never really used to go inside. It was always out on the terrace. Let me take you also back to, you also did Hacienda in 1989.
Yes.
What was that like? Because you can see the videos. I mean, that's high energy, huh?
Yeah, I was playing Killer instrumental before I think I knew Seal by this point, but I hadn't got him on that tune. It was just one of the tunes in my set, which was all instrumental, apart from Daddy Chester like emceeing over it. But that wasn't scripted. That was just him, you know, being a hype man on the mic.
Totally.
It was. You can see it on YouTube. I'm playing Killer at the Hacienda in '89. That was, I think, in December '89.
Yeah, everyone's going insane.
I mean, that was so exciting. I'd never been up north before I went on the big Audio Dynamite tour. Must have been in October. I'd never even been up north. I mean, I'm a southern puff, or whatever they call them. Up there.
Snatch,
I remember. I've never been north of the Watford Gap. And it was so. And then to go up to another legendary club and be embraced and given such a warm welcome, and they used to let off all those klaxons and stuff in there, which I'd never heard before, you know. You're like, it was just like so exciting, Wayne. I'm just so...
You can see it, mate. Just watching the footage is really, really exciting. And for you, Adam, you made all this music, you know, in your bedroom. I think we might have lost you for a second.
Yeah, someone's trying to call me. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's you. You made all this music alone in your bedroom, yeah?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that process, mate, and then we'll talk about playing it to people. But tell us about your process.
Okay, that's always been like when all I wanted to do was make music since I was a little kid, and when I was 9, I got an acoustic guitar for Christmas. You know, I asked, please, can I have an acoustic guitar? And I learnt a few simple chords. And also when I was 9, I saw the Sex Pistols on Top of the Pops, and I was just totally intrigued by what's punk rock and what is this whole thing. And then I became quite obsessed with Malcolm Maclaren, who was the Sex Pistols manager and the guy that kind of orchestrated it all. He was a kind of art school rebel, kind of political he liked stirring things up, winding people up, and he brought all these elements together, you know, stuff that was going on in New York, and he put this band together and named them the Sex Pistols. I mean, most people know this, but
but still,
but
people might not.
He was the guy I just somehow as a kid realized that it was his kind of genius that made this thing it explode, you know. And so I was really I called my cat Malcolm when I was 10. Like, I had a ginger Tom, and it was my first pet, and it was called Malcolm after Malcolm Maclaren. So I inspired.
He had a huge influence on our generation as well, didn't he? You know,
he did,
from the punk to Buffalo Gals and
hip hop. He even influenced back the Americans themselves. You know, Herbie Hancock's like breakdance classic Rocket. You know, Herbie Hancock's a real jazz guy,
massive song,
jazz funk. But he made this really electronic track that was directly inspired by hearing Malcolm Maclaren's Buffalo Gals. And
and that's a really timeless track. Even today, that's a big track.
Yeah. And so, and also for me, you know, the whole look of the whole thing too. I mean, I still, you know, my favorite things ever were punk rock and acid house. I'm a kind of punk rock acid house kind of guy, and I'm nearly 53, and I just don't think I'm ever going to grow out of it.
And I hope I don't. Mate. I'm 54, and I'm like, mate, I'm a kid, mate. I'm so immature.
Yeah, so when I was going back to bedroom music, when I was 11, I coerced my little brother, who was 5, into being my singer, just inspired by Malcolm Maclaren and this whole do-it-yourself ethos from punk rock. And I used to listen to John Peel, all these odd, you know, very cheaply recorded things that you didn't have to be like Eddie Van Halen, or God rest his soul, or, you know, you didn't have to be, you could just, anyone could like make music, just make some music. I recorded a little thing on a Tesco cassette recorder that I got for Christmas, probably the year after I got my acoustic guitar. I remember these cassette recorders, mono, little brown thing, cost
I remember them.
13 quid. And I recorded 3 songs onto there with my little brother. I was like, sing this, sing that. I stole the melody off a bubblegum advert for Bubblicious.
Bubblicious.
Yeah, exactly. And I made babysitters. And I took the lyrics out of Baby Crockett from the Ibiza, was it Ibiza or Dandy magazine? And then I took from the Sex Pistols, well, from the Great Rock and Roll Swindle, there was a cover version of Rock Around the Clock with Eddie Tenpole Tudor singing it. All these mental maverick, like eccentric misfit characters, and the soundtrack to the Great Rock and Roll Swindle. It wasn't just angry, like amphetamine sulfate guys from a council estate playing rock, like sped up rock and roll. It was like classical music, disco, music hall, Max Bygraves. It was just so diverse. That's what
that's the DIY culture of punk for sure.
And do whatever you want. So I just really got that into my spirit as a little kid, and then I've always just made bedroom music. I tell you, in the period that I was signed to a major label, they would get me to go into these studios that cost like $1,000 a day, like Advision and Matrix and all these big studios in London that now I doubt they're even still there, because you can do the same as what you had to spend $1,000 a day on in there. You can do that in a laptop. You could probably even do it on your phone now.
That's nuts, isn't it?
But I used to think, I've got to go in a proper studio because I'm signed to a record label and they said this and they said that. And
I think that's the same for all artists at the time as well, though.
But I honestly used to get a better sound recording onto a cassette in I lived in a bedsit above the Paradise Kebab Shop on Camden High Street, opposite the Camden Palace, which is now Coco. So I used to blag it into there too, because the girl that lived downstairs from me above the kebab shop, we had like all adjoining bed sits. Jeanette, who lived downstairs, she was the head bar woman in the Camden Palace. So I could go in, have free drinks, and that was when like Colin Favor and people like that were doing nights.
89, was it?
88,
even better. Orange, I think, was there as well.
I think so. But I also used to go to Feet First, which was more of a kind of student night, and they used to have, Suicide, the godfathers of electronic music I told you about. They played there. This was in 86. I saw them there. And Divine, the big transvestite. I don't know if you're allowed to say transvestite anymore. I'll get into trouble, because you have to be careful what you say. But I love Divine's music. Shake It Up. I mean, in Confusion, actually, Kid Bachelor used to play this Divine track, Native Love. Used to go step by step, slowly I turn, step by step, come on. And it was it was about 5 years after, but mixing that in to the acid house spectrum in 88.
It's like that Chicago voice, isn't it? Like that.
Well, here Divine had this big, I mean, she was a big girl, or he was big, or she, and had this big sort of smokes too much, drink sort of raunchy. And I saw her on the Tube, that program, the Tube, that was a wicked program. That's also part of my growing up. We had brilliant music shows like the Old Grey Whistle Test and the Tube, and even Top of the Pops, because Top of the Pops, it was mainstream and national TV prime time viewing every Thursday, 7 p.m. It was everybody had to watch it.
And the Tube was quite edgier as well, wasn't it? I mean, the Top of the Pops was quite commercial, isn't it? Because everyone wanted to see where their song had come in the charts. But the Tube, the Tube was edgy, rough. I actually went to the Tube once. We rode down. It was in Newcastle. They used to record it. And we rode down with The Cure, who were really great guys. They were really cool. We rode down there. We did the show. And then we came back, but we had a great time up there. But it was Channel 4. Yeah, it was a brand new emerging show. I mean, this was before 89. This was like Lullaby, 86 or something like that.
89, one of Alfredo's like anthem tunes was Lullaby by The Cure.
Yeah, mate.
And that was like 90 BPM. It wasn't a banging It's this beautiful track with beautiful strings, and it was just like had this really brilliant guitar groove loop through it, and that was a massive tune in Amnesia. It wasn't all about just 120 to 130 boof boof boof. It was just I was so but anyway, we keep just digressing all over the place.
That's perfect. That's exactly what we want to do.
Okay.
I mean, and that's the thing though, but it was the music that actually had an emotional impact on us. All of those songs. I mean, Alfredo would play songs from the 70s, from the 60s, from the 50s. He didn't care.
Another one was Glad to Know You, Chaz Jankel. Chaz Jankel was like one of Ian Jury's main songwriting partners.
Sure.
And then he with Ian Jury and the Blockheads, who I loved when I was growing up as a kid.
Hit me with your rhythm stick.
Yeah, what a brilliant record. But Chaz Jankel did this song Glad to Know You, and I actually remember crying. That was a 70s, I think late 70s, early 80s tune, but Alfredo was playing that nightly in 89 because he just picked things out from different eras that just seemed to really suit the mood and incorporate that into his current set. It wasn't all just about going to the record shop and buying all the latest tunes that everyone's playing and I'm just playing it. It was like his knowledge of music, and he was a bit older than everyone else too. I mean, I think he was about early 30s when
and I think he was originally a journalist as well.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I think he was originally a journalist, so he came from it with that systematic.
I know, and then I was living when I was going back to Ibiza backwards and forwards in '89. I was staying in his farmhouse in the middle of nowhere with him and Ricardo de Force and Alfredo's big Alsatian dog, and Ricky used to wind me up. He used to say he used to tell me the dog's name was Fuego or something, which was fire, which it wasn't, and saying, the dog will, I'd be like tripping on acid, and Ricky would tell me that the dog wants to eat me, and he was really playful and funny. He was a great friend, but I think he never did.
Not when you're on LSD.
He didn't get the sort of intricacies of it. That it's not a good idea to tell someone that an Alsatian named Fire wants to eat them. But still, it was all spirit.
An Alsatian is in the house.
But we were staying there, and there was decks. And there was a farmyard with like goats and chickens, and like with decks. And Alfredo would be off at the beach or whatever, or off, meeting girls or whatever. And me and Ricky would just be there, or maybe Alfredo was actually sleeping. I don't know. But
I guess sometimes he was, and sometimes he wasn't.
Yeah, like all of us, really. Like any human. But we'd be like just rifling through his records and just like, wow, what's this? And discovering all this new music and, stuff like Manuel Gotching, that track E2, E4, which is an hour long. It was on vinyl. It was like half an hour on each side. And they sampled it and made that Sueno Latino track, which was a big tune that year. But what they sampled that from is more beautiful, and it's like basically one night Alfredo, that was really like Alfredo, I think it might have been the opening night. He was like, right, I'd done my sound check, the club's kind of empty but just sort of opening, and the bar people are setting up their optics and bringing in the crates of beers and stuff, and the lights are starting to, and he's like, I've got to go home and get changed. Can you like man the decks? And I'm like, what? And he's like, I'm like, what shall I play? And he said, put that on, and it's like, and then he said, so I'm like, I'm the DJ in the best nightclub in the world. It was dude. What the fuck? And then when that one ran out, I was playing, which he also told me to play, was like the theme from Baghdad Cafe, that I am calling you. Beautiful song, because it was early enough. It didn't have to be, you know, people are just filtering in and, you know, having a champagne.
This is where the concept of warm-up DJs come from, I guess.
And then I found my brother's record. My brother made this record called The Garden of Eden with Steve Jackson from Kiss FM.
I remember that song. That's a great song.
Pam Hogg, the fashion designer. Yeah, that was my brother.
Yeah, great song, mate. I bought that song.
Oh, okay.
I bought that vinyl, mate. Great song with the bells and like, them bells had bells in it. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a few different mixes. The Himalayan mix and
Himalayan mix.
Serpent in the Garden. So
I always visualized loads of monks like walking along and then like throwing off their, you know, their robes and just going mad dancing on a dance floor or something. To that particular track.
Acid house, the first acid house track, or maybe the first British acid house track to get in the pop charts. But I was so there I am, like I'm DJing in the best club in the world, playing my brother's record. I just felt like it was I wouldn't have even needed those pills to get so high. But I did. I enhanced all the amazing stuff in my life going on with.
Well, it was quite a lot of peer pressure as well, wasn't there? It's
no one needed to pressure me.
Well, the funny thing is, like, you know, in terms of, you know, taking drugs as a culture, you know, like we wasn't really that used to taking different types of drugs. Lots of weed, so you would smoke. But for us, you know, there obviously in just down the road from here in East London, there was a huge heroin epidemic and stuff like that. But I never took part in that, and a lot of people I know didn't take part in that. And then obviously crack came along. There was a huge crack epidemic, and I didn't take part in that either. But I did take part in LSD. I took some LSD in early 80s, and then obviously when MDMA come along, I jumped straight on that as well.
Well, for me, because I grew up in the New Forest. I was born in. This isn't the New Forest. This is the Vienna Woods. Everybody,
yeah,
I'm in Austria
live and
now.
direct from Austria. God, Sam.
I think I'm kind of looking. No, not really Austria.
No, you're grand.
But I grew up I was born in the village of Lyndhurst, which is where Lewis Carroll was inspired to write Alice in Wonderland.
Wow.
And it's also where magic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, grow freely. So
it just so happens.
As a teenager, we all went mushroom picking, you know, like when I was 15, 16, you go and pick mushrooms on a Saturday afternoon and eat them on Saturday night. And that was, but there wasn't nightclubs or anything like that. So, I mean, I go to the youth club, the school youth club discos where they only played chart pop music. I had John Peel for my alternative, more interesting music, but I did like both. I was on both sides because pop music in the 80s wasn't so dull. There was amazing stuff, you know, like the Human League and Soft Cell and Depeche Mode and the Specials and the Stray Cats. It was like lots of
exciting times.
You know, Buffalo Gals. There was all different kinds of amazing things. So pop music was good, but then John Peel used to play really more odd stuff, and I kind of embraced it all. Like in every genre of music, I can find something to like, you know. But a lot of Saturday nights, you know, when I was young, would be just sitting in the park drinking bottles of Merry Down cider, you know, and smoking joints, and then be like lying in someone's little like cottage in the woods, you know, taking speed, and so you'd stay awake all night talking and listening to records, and that was kind of my social life and entertainment, and it was good and fun. And there was, I kind of remember, you know, we'd listen to a whole Frank Zappa album, which is pretty trippy, and then there was this artist called Jim Fetus, who was also on the Tube actually, and he had all these pseudonyms like You've Got Fetus on Your Breath. He did an album as, or Scraping Fetus Off the Wheel, and it just horrible really. But he did this mad electronic music before I'd heard house music or anything like that, but very like sampled and programmed, very electronic. He was on the Tube and he got into trouble because he was like interviewed by Paula Yates or someone, and he said a woman's place is on my face.
Oh my word!
And he's American. He's like, I don't know what he's doing now, but I think he was on the same label as Soft Cell and stuff, Some Bizarre, like, which was a really great label in the 80s, as well as Soft Cell. I think there was this album called Soul Mining by The.
Yeah, I remember
one guy, Matt, someone from East London. But listening to albums like that, electronic music, but not from the club scene per se, and also you know, the art of noise and things. But those sort of records, then you needed to be rich. You know, Yellow also, you know, Yellow were like millionaire playboys. Their music was amazing, but to be able to make music like that, you know, a sampler cost like 30 grand, you know, at the beginning of the 80s, and stuff like that. Also another great album, David Byrne and Brian Eno. David Byrne from Talking Heads and Brian Eno, the producer of David Bowie and U2 and loads of things, who invented ambient music. And a great album, My Life in the Bush of Ghosts, from the early 80s, that was, you know, a lot of tape editing and splicing bits of, you know, sample. It was one of the first kind of sampling albums, but doing a lot of it from tape and getting stuff off the radio, and like a preacher doing an exorcism over like African rhythms, and just like mental, but like really good. I'd really recommend that album.
Very cool.
But listening to stuff like that and just smoking bongs and just listening to music was, until I moved to London, and then, as I said, started to go to places like Camden Palace. Also in '88, there was High on Hope at Dingwalls.
Yeah.
I didn't go to Shum until I played there in '89, because, to be honest, I felt I was petrified by being turned away and insulted by Jenny Rampling. It was too intimidating for me.
It was very hard to get in there, so you know.
I'd heard about it, and I really wanted to go. You know, I was buying like Detroit techno and Chicago acid records, and apart from, you know, going to Ibiza in '88, I didn't really know where to go to experience it, apart from Shum, which just, you know, when I did go to Shum, Jenny Rampling, there'd be a girl trying to get in, and Jenny Rampling would go, "Get back in the gutter where you belong, you slut," and stuff. And it's like, I'm, you know, I'm quite a meek bloke, and not just to, you know, so I didn't go to Shum, but I did used to go to High on Hope, because it was Dingwalls was further up Camden High Street by the Lock, and I lived on Camden High Street, as I said, above the kebab shop. And my other flatmate,
that was a big night, High on Hope.
Yeah, adjoining bedsit was living Jimmy Polo, my mate from Chicago. And we used to go up, and he used to introduce me to all the like Marshall Jefferson and Adonis, and it was like Adonis came round to our bed sits, and I had my gear set up in my bed sit. This is you asked me about making music in my bedroom, and this conversation's gone.
Mate, I love the journey.
It's gone around the world.
Listen, we love the journey. I'm sure everyone listening loves the journey, mate.
Adonis, of all the Chicago house pioneers, innovators, he's still my favorite. I think his music from back then, over 30 years ago, still sounds futuristic and fresh and dark and sexy. And like he produced Lack of Love by Charles B. That's in my top 10 house records.
Used to be a lack of love.
Yeah. He produced No Way Back.
No Way Back.
He produced this track called Shout under a different name, Jack Frost and the Circle Jerks, but it had that acid.
Yeah. Excellent.
Evil Eddie Richards sampled that for that. Acid Man.
Totally,
Acid
dude.
Man.
Totally.
And he sampled Acid Man off Cheech and Chong, I think, which is another thing. When I was lying around in the forest in my friend's cottage and stuff, listening to records, we'd have to listen to Cheech and Chong, and it'd be like, oh God, get back with the music.
On vinyl as well, wasn't it? Do you remember? It was actually on vinyl. Yeah.
It was funny and stuff, but I just wanted to hear more music. I could never get enough music. But so I was making.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No,
so you started making. So you started making them. So then you turned to it yourself. You got yourself a keyboard or something, and then you was like, right, this is me now.
Well, on the back of that Stupid Babies record, which when I started telling you about my bedroom
excellent
experiment, I sent the cassette to a label which was called Fast Product Records, and it was a really cool post-punk independent label in the late 70s, run by the manager of the Human League, and it's the label that released the first Human League album. It released early Joy Division. It released DAF, the German group DAF, which all these people were hugely influential on house and techno. Jimmy Polo, a lot of the stuff that influenced the black dudes making Chicago house was like white Europeans. So when people say, oh, it was a black music, it was not. It was cross-pollinating. Kraftwerk were like 4 whiter than white guys from like
Germans.
Dusseldorf. And it's music's for everyone. Derek May, another one of my idols, got up at the New Music Seminar in New York in 1990 and said, Adamski stolen the music from us, the blacks. And I'm like, I was so gutted, so
for
hurt.
sure, mate.
That was like someone just stabbing me in the heart, because I loved that guy's music. Yeah, and then he'll go, oh, he's really inspired by Kraftwerk and the B-52s, and he hates Tamla Motown. They're from Detroit. That Motown was from Detroit, and he's like, I hate that music. So it's like, well, why is he kind of having a pop at me and I used a 909 drum machine. Basically the music I make is all these different things that I've grown up with. Like my piano style, I would have said I got more from two-tone, from the Specials and Madness, and I taught myself to play piano, and these sort of poppy sort of rhythmic things that I used to play, which I became famous for, really. I played the piano on Jimmy Polo's Better Days, which is quite a legendary underground house track.
Yeah, mate.
then that piano was sampled by many people, and that piano style was, I didn't nick that from Detroit. That was just from my growing up with, you know, British
different influences,
music,
yeah, for sure.
the Specials, and who were influenced by Jamaican music, who were influenced by this and that. And it's like, nobody owns music, you know, music's for everybody. You can do whatever you like. I mean, it was, yeah, that was painful. I don't know, how did I get onto that? And yeah, I used a 909 drum machine like Derek May, but like many people used the 909 drum machine, but I wasn't using it to copy them. I bought the 909.
Your album Live and Direct as well, that was a unique to you. I want to say that it sounds like Derek May, or it sounds like Detroit stuff. That was quite unique. And there's obviously you are influenced by those dudes, yeah.
Yeah, and they opened up you know, a world, where I could present that music. But you know, my influences would be like the Stranglers, the Doors, Devo, the Fall, Mantronics, Suicide, Kraftwerk, the Human League. My influences were like from all over the place, and Chicago house and Detroit techno as well, and Italo disco, you know. And he said, that he just took our music and put some poppy chords over it, and
it's a shame you got kind of pointed out, you know, highlighted in the scenario. When I suppose there was a lot of Europeans by 1990. There was a lot of Europeans making house music, wasn't there, at that point, and dance music.
Yeah. But I mean,
so to point you out,
there always was, really. I mean, that, like Jimmy Polo told me that in Chicago they really liked Joy Division, which was dark gothy white guys from Manchester.
They would do like line dancing. They would do line dancing in clubs to Kraftwerk and heavy German instrumental music, you know. It's surprising, you know. And everyone in the club's black as well, you know. So to see them dancing to like some really hardcore electro from Germany, it's like,
so
you know,
cool. And
they were into it, you know.
George Krantz track, that din da da din da da din da da. That was a big.
I mean, there's
loads of tunes. I mean, they also liked who weren't white guys. I mean, it doesn't fucking matter what colour people are, but they loved Imagination, which was a British group too.
Imagination.
No, the group.
Oh, not them.
The song, you're singing the song.
Oh yes, of course.
Belouis Sum. I mean, the group Imagination that did. I can't remember a song, but they were like on top of the pops regularly, you know. They were camp as Christmas, you know, with like sequined leotards and stuff. But they were from like Tottenham or somewhere. Lee John, the singer. But they were, you know, the influences on Chicago house and
when you did Killer,
know,
when you did Killer, Adam, I think I read somewhere where you said something like it reminded you of a theme song for an assassin or something.
That's right.
Did I hear you say that?
That's why I called it Killer, the Killer, in fact, because I just, when I made that music in my bedsit, I just imagined that, as a soundtrack. It was always something I've wanted to do, is soundtracks. I never ever got round to it, or never got asked, or never networked with the right people. But I actually did finally do some soundtrack work last year, funnily enough, for Malcolm Maclaren's son, Joe Corey, has made a film about environmental issues and about the end of punk rock and things that his mother is Vivienne Westwood and his father was Malcolm Maclaren. And
he's interesting combination.
He's made this film called Wake Up Punk, and I've done the soundtrack to that, but the film's all got held up by Johnny Rotten saying you can't use this and you can't use that, and but I actually
You've done your
finally
part.
I got round to doing some soundtrack work, and actually, the satisfaction for me is even in just doing it. I mean, I hope for Joe's sake the film sees the light of day, but my pleasure is in just making the music, and it doesn't really matter to me if people even hear it. Well, obviously, I'd like people to hear it and tell me, oh, we like your music, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. I mean, with what's going on in the world these days, like, music is the least of our worries, really. Like,
it's the least of our worries, but at least it provides a lot of people with an escape.
Do you know what I've really thought? That acid house somehow, old school acid, new school, current acid, as young people interpret it, or people make, like, acid house somehow seems like the really perfect soundtrack for the world today.
Sure.
I mean, maybe it's just because I love acid house, but I've been listening to acid house doing the gardening, doing the cooking, working out, having sex, chilling out. Like, acid house seems like the perfect soundtrack to everything. But it really, like, I know that in the late 80s there was this sort of acid house utopia, like it was this kind of new summer of love and peace kind of movement, but I also kind of saw it as a bit dystopian, like all these people like off their nut, and they were. We've got over pretending that it wasn't a massive drug culture,
It's so funny when I see people sticking to that. I'm like, dude,
back in the day, like, I would be
we used to pretend, but
smash hits and stuff, and I would lie, not lie. I'd kind of avoid talking about the truth, acid house and its subgenres and associated genres was fantastic music. Don't get me wrong. And I loved the music, and I didn't only like the music because I was high, but a big part of that whole scene was getting fucking smashed off your box. And I found that at the time, even though, as I said, I used to like doing speed, and I used to love getting drunk and smoking bongs and picking magic mushrooms. I was well familiar, I was quite ingrained in, drug culture and stuff. I still, ecstasy was all new, and seeing thousands of people all on this drug looking kind of pretty vacant, like, I found that quite dystopian, the same as I found being in London or now Vienna and seeing the empty streets on a weekday and empty, like, public transport and everyone wearing masks. It's very dystopian, and somehow these things link together for me. Like, I don't know why. Like, I don't know if I'm explaining myself well, but I just.
No, you totally are, mate. You totally are.
It's weird times, and those were weird times too.
For everyone.
I remember, being outside the Trip in Charing Cross Road in '88, and I didn't get in. There was too many people trying to get in, and again, I was.
Yeah, you had to go early, mate. You had to go when you go to the Trip at Astoria. You had to be there like 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Right, and I was too. I was too much of a timid guy to try and jump the queue, and
and that's what you had to do. You had to walk around the corner and go straight to the front, mate.
Yeah. So I didn't even go there. I played there when they changed the name to Sin the following year. I played.
Sin was massive as well, mate.
Yeah, but I never, the Trip as it was, and my brother used to go there and tell me, and that Nicky Holloway was playing Acid Over by Tyree on the wrong speed, so it was going
Wow.
Acid Over, and I was like so jealous.
Dude.
And that he was playing Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel.
Sledgehammer, Alphabet Street, you know, by Prince. Oh, that was a big song. Big song.
I love Telling
Dance
My
with the
Wife,
Devil. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Massive, massive songs. And so for you, so obviously at this point you'd already produced live and direct the album.
No.
Your first album, how you hadn't produced it at this point? You were still making singles or?
No, live and direct was the tracks that I was playing around the orbital rave scene and Amnesia in '89.
Yeah,
I'd started, in '88. I was still in this group called Discord Daccord with my brother, that was the Garden of Eden, and another guy called Johnny Slut, who on and off we've done stuff together over the years. He was doing a club called Nag 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 about 15 years ago, which was round the back of the Astoria in a club called Ghetto, which is all flattened now.
It's all gone now.
That was like the electro clash scene. That was and we had this band called Discord Daccord, and our last gig was at the Camden Palace, actually supporting Nitzareb, who Nitzareb did that join in the chant, guns, bombs, which
Muscle
was a
and
massive,
hate.
another massive Ibiza tune. All these things are sort of interlinked, and I was still living opposite the Camden Palace so we did our last gig. So I had the tail end of
your head's chopped off a bit.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
I changed my name to Adamski in 1988. I heard this tape of this UFO conference, and they were talking about this guy called George Adamski, who was reckoned he'd been in UFOs and stuff, like some mental, Polish American guy. And I just thought that name just sounds like
cool
seems to represent what I'm doing. My name is Adam, and I gave my name a bit of a remix and a bit of an update. And because in Discord Daccord, my name was Adam Schmuck, which is like a crap name, because my mate was called Johnny Slut. And I thought I need a name that sort of matches his, but it doesn't quite slip off the tongue. But anyway, so I changed my name to Adamski. I had this project also called Legion of Dynamic Discord. I did a cover version of David Bowie's Rebel Rebel that Steve Jackson used to play on Kiss FM, but I didn't really know how to make that sort of music, and it was like lots of samples, and it was like stupid, really. It was more like a comedy record. But the B-side, I did the track called Alien Breed, which was like kind of my interpretation of acid house. Has a 303 or a Roland SH101 bass line, and like lots of stupid samples from like old sci-fi movies and stuff. And also in '88 was when I played the piano on Jimmy Polo's Better Days, which came out in '89. During this period from '88 to '89, as I said, going to High on Hope and stuff, High on Hope was more the kind of soulful and deep house mostly.
Sure.
And personally, I preferred, the madder stuff, more instrumental, acid and techno. And every now and then he would like drop in something like Yo-Yo Get Funky, Fast Eddie, or, hip house with the acid stuff. And I'd be like, it taught me, I opened to more different sorts of music. And a tune that was really big then was Turntable Orchestra, Gonna Miss Me When I'm Gone.
Gonna Miss Me When I'm Gone.
Yeah, that piano and stuff. So great.
Top tune.
So, and I was going to like, you know, the odd rave in Bermondsey or Queensway or Kingsway, and you know, I was traveling around with either my brother, who was the Garden of Eden,
yeah,
dude,
great song,
or with Jimmy Polo, who was, you know, going, boy, if Tyree Cooper could see this now, when there'd be like, you know, 200 people in ponchos and like Dayglow Converse running from the police trying to get into some warehouse or something.
Excellent. And, those are the days. So,
excuse my terrible Jimmy Polo impression. But anyway, so and he was teaching me how to use this ensonic sequencer so I could put all my ideas together and present them and play them out. And it just a series of coincidences, or I don't really believe in coincidences. I believe that everybody has their own destiny, and it's all things happen for a reason, and for whatever reason,
sure,
the universe put me playing at an all-dayer in heaven in 1989 in March.
Wow, dude.
On a Sunday afternoon, and it was before I even had I didn't even have a keyboard stand. I had my synthesizer, sequencer, and 909 drum machine, and I was kneeling on the stage with people dancing around me and stepping over me, going, what are you doing? And like I'm pressing in these buttons and playing, and then the promoter,
what are you doing?
And it went off. I have to say, you know, it went. I smashed it.
Yeah.
That was my first proper gig.
Did you record one of those for your album? Was there a live version, or was
there was?
Am I thinking of something else?
Recorded. No, there was bits of all these raves and bits and bobs recorded badly, usually because we were all too off it to like remember to press record on the DAT machine and stuff. But bits and bobs, and we took World Dance in East Grinstead or somewhere, one of those big raves. Anton the Pirate did World Dance after he did Energy. We had a mobile recording studio come down, and I was so off my head that I actually played Energy 3 times, and I forgot that I'd play another track, and then just play it again. And listening back to the tapes after, it's like, oh my God, but no one complained.
That was a great party, though.
You just played that tune like 5 minutes ago. No one
cared, did they?
No one. No.
Everyone just wanted to hear it again. Everyone was caught up in the moment, because the music that you were creating reflected the whole orbital generation. You know, it's people could actually, they felt empathy for that. They felt that you was on this journey along with everybody else. So when they saw you playing at the parties, I mean, you played at Hacienda, you played at Ibiza, the opening of Amnesia. I mean, you did some gigs in Brixton Academy, you know. Yeah. And then, so at what point, when you did Killer, at what point did Seal come into the framework?
Well, we used to go to Clapham Common for the after hours.
Yeah, there was some after, just for those who might not know. I mean, if you can explain it if you want.
Well, Sunday mornings after big parties like Energy and Sunrise and whatever, from early summer in '89, it became a sort of after hours gathering on Clapham Common. There was a pub there called the White Horse. I can't remember what it was. Basically, sort of from 8 o'clock or so on Sunday morning, people would all come and hang out on the common, and it started off just 100 or 200 people, and there'd be kids running around playing football, and this guy called Mark M used to come and park with this red car
with his red Sierra.
That was it, Ford Sierra. And he used to park his car, and he had a massive sound system in the boot, and he'd open the back of the car, and there'd be people just dancing around to tapes of DJ sets, and one of my sets was on a tape, and just the people dancing around in the sunshine on Clapham Common. And then in a matter of weeks, people started turning up there with trucks and like burger bands and
It's
all
true.
the rest of it, and took over
sound
the whole
systems, yeah.
But and I kind of I think I was
and
probably
hundreds of people were turning up at this point.
Yeah, exactly, or thousands.
Yeah,
even
you know.
But I think I must have been away in Ibiza this particular weekend, and Seal went up to Daddy Chester, who was my MC and flatmate, and said, like, I saw your guy Adamski playing at Sunrise 5000, which was at Santa Pod. Seal had just come back from touring Thailand with a jazz funk band or some random shit, and he just came back from Thailand. A mate of his had said, you've got to see what's going on in Britain. Took him to Sunrise 5000. He walked into the warehouse or aircraft hangar or whatever it was, where while I was playing, and was like, oh, I want to sing for this guy. And then he, you know, recognized Daddy Chester, who's pretty recognizable, like a Rasta dude with like luminous green metallic trousers on, which were mine actually.
He was a unique looking character at that time. You wouldn't see a Rasta geezers dressed like that. Yeah.
perks of being my flatmate was like, and my size was like having dibs like on my wardrobe, but you know, we used to share everything anyway. And so he gave Daddy Chester a cassette and said, could you play that to Adam? Which he did, and it was a demo version of Crazy and another song called Sparkle,
wow,
which he'd recorded with this guy called Guy Sigsworth, who went on to produce Bjork, Madonna, Sugar Babes, who's still a good friend of mine. I became friends with Guy through Seal. Oh God, am I making this a bit too long-winded?
Not at all. Adam, mate, we're really interested in what you got to say, dude. This is important.
So I heard this cassette and I thought, wow, amazing. And then I met Seal for the first time at this club called Solaris, which was both of our favourite club. And the DJ, Aaron Abdullah, was a brilliant DJ, brilliant, inspiring DJ in London at the time, and still is. He's still DJing, not sure where currently. I'm a bit out of the loop, but I know he used to do those Sancho Panza things at the Notting Hill Carnival and all stuff. But anyway,
the Sancho Panza parties, the sound system, the good parties. Yeah. That's who I used to go to when I go to Notting Hill.
Okay, well, Aaron does those, but he was the resident DJ at Solaris, which became my favourite club in London in '89, from sort of towards the end of the summer, because it was on Sunday night and it clashed with Confusion, and I somehow managed to fit them both in. But anyway, I ended up
big shout to Nicky Trax, man. Confusion was just awesome, dude.
Yeah, and to Leslie Lawrence and Kid Bachelor and all the rest of them. And I used to play there in '89 too. I forgot. And I played in Solaris with Seal, just standing on the dance floor, no stage, plugged into the DJ console, live mic, Seal singing Killer to, you know.
Go on, my son.
And apparently I was told that David Cameron used to go to Solaris and be lurking in the corner with his missus with a sweaty baseball cap on, and David Cameron was in Solaris. The other day in the Sun newspaper, they picked up on me saying that somewhere. I mean, it's pretty true. David Cameron is like our generation.
Yeah.
Apparently
he became Prime Minister of England, for those who don't know.
Yeah. Apparently he was down Solaris. Obviously, he wasn't known as the Prime Minister of England then, so people wouldn't have batted an eyelid. But I was told he was mates with Tony Colston Hayter as well, who was the promoter of Sunrise. And, you know, he's from that kind of posh boys background, which a lot of people, that was a good thing about that scene too. It was just kind of cut down all the barriers between the different classes of people and different races, and that was an amazing whole big deal thing about it too. That
and for you personally, having created music in your bedroom, you've hooked up with Seal now. Obviously, you liked the track, and now, I mean, how did that deal come about?
Well, that was literally the spirit of the times. I'd be open to collaborate with anybody. There was a lot of people offering to sing on my music. Boy George, who I have since gone on to record with, who I know from that scene, he said I could write a song for every single track on Live and Direct. For those who don't know that album, it's completely instrumental album, and I sort of I thought, oh no, I don't really want Boy George to do. Now, retrospectively, I so wish I had. I mean, the fact is, I could actually.
No, but that's just insane, though, mate. That you went from you've done all this music in your bedroom. Obviously, you listened to Boy George. Boy George was an international star, and now Boy George is saying to you, "Let me write a song for your album," and you're saying, "Nah."
For every single track.
For every track, you're like, "Nah."
And I could have, like I said, I got friendly with Mick Jones from The Clash. I could have probably got him to sing on it. But aside from these well-known people, there was all, kind of my peer group, all these creative, individuals on the club scene, rappers and singers and DJs.
Anyone would have worked with you at that point. I mean, just being around you, there was such excitement that was around you, and it was so exciting whenever anyone knew that you were going to be performing live that night. It really, it really heightened everybody's excitement, and that's the truth.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's I'm flattered. So it was just the spirit of the times that this dude Seal had approached me and with this amazing demo, and I'm like, but before it kind of came to pass, we were just hanging out in Solaris, and I don't think he'll mind me saying this because he's on record saying it himself in a recent BBC interview, as we were just off our gourds on ecstasy. All
the rest of a generation, like all of
exactly.
us.
That's how we bonded through chemicals. And then at some point, and Seal used to keep on my sofa, before he was this sort of sexy, like, soul god living in Hollywood, dressed in leather and riding around on a motorbike and smoking Davidoff cigars and stuff. He was like wearing like old jogging bottoms and riding around on a moped with his like dreads hanging out of his helmet, and like looking on this moped that looked really like too small because he's big, he's like 6'2" or something, and he's got this little moped, and he'd be staying on my sofa and we'd be hitting the clubs together. And then I'm like, one day I said, look, I've got to put some demos together for a single. I don't know what I'm going to do next, but come around the studio and just like let's have a crack at doing something, and pick any of my instrumentals that you like. And he's like, can I have that one? And
your assassinations, like, your assassin's theme.
The Killer. And he said, oh, I've got these lyrics that I wrote a song called The Killer, coincidentally.
Wow, dude.
And these lyrics kind of fit over the music. And I was like,
wow,
can you kind of do it in the, because from the Balearic scene, all this that we were talking about before, all these different genres sort of crossing over together, I was really like feeling like I wanted to do something like really with a rock sort of Led Zeppelin kind of attitude, and I'm like, okay, can you sing those words but kind of in the style of Led Zeppelin with that approach, that and kind of, and so, and that's what came out of it. It didn't have a chorus. I because I was into instrumental music from Detroit and stuff, I thought for me the chorus was just those bells going do 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 do. It didn't have to be a human being singing anything. Sort of a lot of 80s pop music, it was when, you know, just a synth line was enough, like a hook on the synth kind of was enough, like, you know, orchestral maneuvers in the dark or Blancmange, or these bands just had a hook on the synth that was the bit that people remembered. So for me, it just needed those lyrics about freedom. So you want to be free, blah, blah, blah. And it was enough that it just went into, you know, thinking about what the dancers in the Hacienda did when they heard those strings come in, and it was enough. But the A&R guy, the A&R guy at MCA was like, but you've got to have a chorus. And I was like, oh, so, you know, you've got to have a chorus. And he was cool. His name was Paul Doggett. He passed away about 10 years ago of lung cancer, but he was a great guy. You know, he gave me pretty much carte blanche to do what I liked. He came to the raves and came to Shoom, and he, you know, he was like, he was cool, and I liked him. We were mates, and he said, yeah, write a chorus. So Seal actually went away with this guy Sigsworth and came up with this Solitary Brother line, because I think at the time I didn't even really know what solitary even meant, to be honest. It's sort of not a sort of word in my vocabulary. It's a bit too intellectual. Oh, solitary, you know, but but whatever. So they came up with that line, Seal and Guy Sigsworth, and Guy Sigsworth is he wrote What It Feels Like for a Girl for Madonna, and he used to do, when he was producing Sugar Babes, he'd go like, why don't you go out and you three go out and get a bite to eat, and then him and the engineer would like do the backing vocals, but girl voices with like pitch, put it through a pitch shifter and auto tune and stuff. And because it was taking too much time to get the girls to do it. And he's a great guy. Guy Sigsworth is actually a professor of 16th century harpsichord.
Wow.
Like that's what he studied at uni. And then he was like really into death metal music. But then in between, he could work with people like Sugar Babes and Madonna and like making like sugary pop songs. I've met some odd and very interesting people in my time, but like I said, I met him through Seal. So that's how Killer came about, really.
Wow, dude.
And then it just happened to happen at the same time as the Berlin Wall coming down and the opening up of the Eastern Bloc. And it kind of became, a lot of people have told me who are from the ex-East Germany and Poland and places like that, that it became an anthem for them because it was this song about freedom and also even South Africa, the end of apartheid, just people like related to those
massive
lyrics.
Moment, mate. And to be connected to that, wow.
I know, I'm super, super proud. And I don't know why, you know, honestly, like that track, meeting Seal, writing that bass line, which is, you know, that song that's been covered like by George Michael and I remade it myself recently with Boy George, the aforementioned Boy George, but also with a whole host of other different sorts of people bringing different vibes to it for the 30th anniversary. I called it Free to Kill Again because it kind of seemed to
great name.
But it's, you know, that there's been so many bootlegs and mashups and remixes and cover versions. I'd say for a song of that genre, even though it's not, is it house, is it techno, is it pop music, it's not quite fitting exactly into a genre, but for a song from that whole scene, that associated scene, I think it must be the most covered song. I mean, I haven't done my research, but it just
you haven't done a survey, but
it seems to me
it's a huge track that played a huge part in so many people's lives, for sure, mate. It's such an impactful song, and it's one of those songs that you expect to hear.
I'm freezing, but it's actually cold.
Oh, brother. Yeah. Well, look, so obviously, so you've done that track with Seal. It was a massive hit. And then what was that like going at the Top of the Pops, dude?
Well, I already went on Top of the Pops before with Energy. Energy was my first hit. And Top of the Pops said it's the first time they'd had an instrumental hit for about a decade. So they didn't know how to present it, just a guy standing there with a synthesizer. So I had Daddy Chester with me. He was not only my MC, he was my dancer. He was a
flatmate, dancer, friend.
Yeah, well, he was a brilliant dancer around the scene, you know, from before I knew him. I mean, I knew him before Acid House because he lived round the corner from me in Camden, and I'd seen him around and we got friendly, and he came, and my band Discord Datcord, he came and emceed for us a couple of times, which was completely probably out of his comfort zone because we were like mental. Like I used to shave my head and glue mirrors to my head and wear like silver jackets and women's pants and we did nuts kind of music. But anyway,
go on, son.
I digressed again. When I did Top of the Pops first time, I had Daddy Chester, and he
Energy, because that must have been insane. So before we get to the second one with Seal, I'm really sorry, mate. I totally bypassed Energy. you know, right, okay. What was that one like, dude? First time.
That was okay. Energy was like, that was the tune that got me noticed on the scene, you know. The riff of Energy was like kind of like my theme tune, like
massive song, massive song.
That used to that was what I opened my set with in Amnesia '89. I usually open my set with that because it was sort of like hello. It's like kind of like my fanfare. That sound, which I made it.
That was your intro.
I made that.
He's on.
That again. It's another thing I just made. You know, probably on a Tuesday morning in my bedroom above the kebab shop. You know, and that it became this really loud, like what the fuck sort of thing. But then, that ended up being my first hit. That was my first single release as Adamski.
And had you signed with MCA at this point?
By that point, I signed with them in like October or November '89.
Okay. So they're getting your record out to the distribution. So now, rather than it just being on the underground, now it's actually it was getting out into all the record shops.
And then the main
was that the Lucozade bottle front cover?
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
I bought that. I bought that. I still got it. Yeah, and I remember I read somewhere, obviously it could be record company spin, but there was like a CEO of Lucozade or something, and he was, you know, his son had brought home this album or whatever, and it had the Lucozade bottle on it,
Yeah,
and then
they
he'd seen
sued
it,
me.
and then he sued it. I was wondering if that was true or just a,
Yeah,
a
they
spin.
sued
Oh, so
me
it was
and
probably
said
true then. Yeah.
that we agreed out of court if I gave $5,000
Okay.
to a charity, the Nordic Robins. I think it was music to help disabled people or disadvantaged in some way people, kids make music. So yeah, I had to give $5,000 to this charity for using the Lucozade
Which
bottle.
wasn't bad, considering they could have made you pull all of them albums, anything with the bottle, off the shelf, including all. Then, I mean, they've done all the adverts, MCA, didn't they? They've done all the, all the press ads and everything. The posters had been done. And again, Lucozade was the soft drink of the periods. Lucozade, Ribena, and water.
Alcohol.
Yeah, no one was drinking alcohol. We didn't have any bars. We didn't have an alcohol bar in the space. Yeah. So that was one of the reasons why you went obviously with the Lucozade bottles. Yeah, was that your idea? Or was that the record company?
No, it was, to be honest, it was some marketing woman in the record.
Yeah, makes sense. And they wrote your name on it.
To be honest, I hated Lucozade because it reminded me of when I was a kid and I was ill in bed with flu, and my mum. I mean, I liked it. I liked the taste of it, but that was the only time I ever drank Lucozade.
No, it makes you right. It's the same as us, same as me, mate. We never drank Lucozade.
My mum would bring me a glass of Lucozade. So when the early raver acid house people were drinking Lucozade, it just reminded me of being ill in bed, which was like, I was like, oh. So, but
that's just bizarre now. Yeah.
Yeah. But then, ironically and unpleasantly, really, Lucozade started using NRG the way I I called my song. They started using that as their slogan. They started putting up posters with NRG.
Wow.
And the reason I called it NRG, and rather than energy, I wanted to name it Energy after that Energy Rave, which was, the most mind-blowing. That was the best party I'd ever been to in my life.
Yeah.
At that point,
I tell people that too.
Until I went to Amnesia opening, which was, I guess, a few weeks after that. That became the best party I'd ever been to, and then I went probably somewhere else, which became the best party I'd ever been. But I can say, hand on heart, that I went to and was involved in some of the greatest parties of the 20th century.
You were, and I witnessed it. I saw you, mate. Yeah, I empathise with that.
But I went to, I wanted to name it Energy after that Energy party. And then I had a bit of a to-do with the Energy guys, with Tintin Chambers and Jeremy Taylor, something about my dog weeding Jeremy's car or something. I can't remember what it was.
Classic.
But I fell out with them. I mean, I'm sure it's all water under the bridge, long gone. I mean, I've never seen Jeremy Taylor since those days. I know after he did that, he went on to run the Mr. Blobby theme park. Noel Edmonds is Mr. Blobby.
Yeah, because it's on his family's land, isn't it? So that's probably why the Noel Edmonds house party. That's the family house.
Oh, that was on my family's land. Imagine that being someone that.
Well, to the man of born, isn't it? That's his gaff.
Oh, okay. I liked him. I remember seeing him.
I interviewed him on the podcast.
He let his hair down a bit and he took his shoes and socks off on Clapham Common or somewhere, and he was like,
because he never took any drugs. He never actually had any ease. He never took any ease.
Right. I read that in Cheryl Garrett's book. That, well, good for him.
Yeah, that's what I said.
There was a rare few minority of people that weren't taking pills.
Very few and far between, though.
Yeah. There was that guy Roger that always used to film everything,
Yeah,
go around with the camera.
I forget his name. Roger. He disappeared, didn't he, for a while?
Yeah, he's sort of around now. He never used to take E's, and I said to him, "God, you're that guy that never used to take drugs."
And you're the one.
And he's like, "I don't even know why I didn't. It wasn't like he was like a Christian or something. He just..."
Well, that's what Jeremy said. That's what Jeremy Taylor says. He's like, it wasn't, it wasn't intentional. It just happened that way. But let's fast forward now.
I just wanted to say,
mate.
I saw Tintin about 5 years ago. I went to see Public Enemy, did a few gigs for only 100 people.
Cool.
And I went to see them. It was in a big studio. I think it's Olympic Studios or a big studio in London. And there were only 100 people there.
Cool, dude.
Liam Gallagher was there dancing, and a few Ronnie Size. I recognised a few people there, and it was quite. I mean, Public Enemy before like Acid House, the middle of the 80s for me. I didn't say, but when I first moved to London, it was Def Jam, Beastie Boys, Public Enemy, Run DMC, and then Mantronics that were they owned Sleeping Bag Records, I think.
Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five.
That was a bit before that, but this mid-80s period when hip hop really, when they did the hot, like Rick Rubin, like mixed in the heavy metal, with
and Activism,
with like Walk This Way and the Beastie Boys, like No Sleep Till Brooklyn, and
you got to fight for the right, and we were fighting for the right, wasn't we?
Yeah. I'm gonna do a mashup with that Beastie Boys one with an acid house tune.
Excellent.
For like a tune that there should have been, that meant to be, that never was.
Right.
Just like rewrite a bit of history, because
I've never heard anyone link those two songs together. That soundtrack from the Beastie Boys, You Got to Fight, because we were fighting, literally fighting for our rights. But so we fast forward, and you're doing some remixes. Was that right to say? I mean, you haven't stopped making music, have you?
No, I never stopped.
Yeah.
No, I just...
So how many albums in? Or, I mean, you may not be counting. I mean, where are you now in terms of your music career?
Albums, I've only made about 5 whole albums in my life. Now, I'm called Firefly, which is more... It's kind of an experiment. They've done like they do back catalogue stuff for like people like Jimi Hendrix and stuff, but I'm their first ever living artist that they're working with. So they're really sweet guys. They're more like benefactors. Like they're enabling me to work on my music and keep me going. And then so far we've released Energy. Its anniversary was last year, 30th anniversary. So
30th anniversary. Go on, Sam.
I called it Re-Energize, and nice. I made a few new versions of Energy, just reimagined it, not remixes. I got the same synthesizer, same sounds, the same bits, and I sped them up and slowed them down and just made different versions. I sampled things like High Energy from that Ian Levine, that DJ who used to be the resident at Heaven when it was a gay club. I've forgotten the name of the artist he got to sing that, but I like mashed it up with things like that, and like kind of just made these nuts new versions. And then this year, being the 30th anniversary of Killer, I made this EP mini album called Free to Kill Again. And as we talked about earlier, I got Boy George to re-sing it. I got Nina Hagen, who's famous. They call her the godmother of punk. She's a German opera singer who started making punk rock in '76 in Germany, and then was around the early punk scene. And she sang a version that's kind of nuts, and some younger people. I got this guy called Theo Zero to do a version that's a very much about. I mean, all the new versions have kind of a new message within them. Like the Nina Hagen version is kind of like my vegan version, and then the Boy George version is like the environmental version, because we recorded it a couple of months before all the rainforest fires started. But my production sort of idea was said to George, like, can you write a new chorus so it takes it up to another level? And he came up with this line, everything is burning, burning, burning. And it was just before all the literally the Australian and Brazilian massive fires. And it was like kind of philosophical prophet of doom kind of stuff. And then it's recorded with and mixed by legendary dub producer Adrian Sherwood, who's like, you know, a British guy, but he brought all the Jamaican MCs over in the 80s. He brought over like
hugely
Prince
influential
Farai
character.
And, U-Roy and all these Bim Sherman, all these like amazing Jamaican influential people, and worked with Daddy Freddie and blah blah blah, lots of people on New Sound recordings. So with George, he'd always wanted to work with Adrian, and I'm good mates with Adrian, and we kind of thought, well, let's make it like George's first love is reggae, and you know, Do You Really Want to Hurt Me, his first breakthrough hit, was kind of a reggae tune, and it was kind of great to revisit George's reggae roots with someone who's very respected in the reggae world, doing a version that's almost like Stepper's, like lovers rock kind of version of Killer, but it's still got original sounds from Killer, but then with all Adrian Sherwood's amazing dub effects and George's powerful voice. I mean, that's available now. Give it a little plug. That version, that's just called Killer, but other versions.
And where do people get that from?
They can just go to Amazon or iTunes, or listen to it on Spotify, the usual digital platforms.
Sorry, you see that pen? You see that pen? It's making a really loud noise in the headphones.
Sorry, it's one of these.
There's going to be people listening going, "What's that bloody noise?"
He's still got the
80s pen.
The 1980s.
Excellent quality. That was a good pen, man. That was one of those biros, just for people who's just listening. That was one of those biros. It has like different colours when you just pull the thing down.
Yeah, look.
Yeah, look at that, dude.
You can choose.
Old school, mate.
I'll have neon green.
Old school. So what do you think?
Prince Boy.
Yeah, mate. So do you think you're going to tour with this? Go on. No, go on.
No. I mean, the party that we had planned for March, it was released on 30 years to the very day when Killer came out in 1990. But unfortunately, that coincided. It was about 2 days before official lockdown, and we had a party we were going to do. There's a studio in King's Cross called Play Deep Studio, and they've got this big room there that holds about 150 people. It's really like a New York loft party from the 80s. The walls are lined with vinyl records. They got an amazing sound system and lights. We were all set. I've done a couple of parties there already with some other people, but we were all set to do the big launch of the Free to Kill Again project, but then responsibly we had to cancel because it was just the big, you know, when the virus started to really kind of take over everyone's life, and no one knew where it was
going to lead, did they? No one knew what was going to happen next. So
we were all gutted to have to cancel this party. Anyway, George was in Australia filming for The Voice because he's one of the judges on The Voice, and he kind of got stuck in Australia, and Nina Hagen's stuck in Germany, and we couldn't, you know, my younger singers, I've got a singer called Hannah Jane who's like wasn't even born when the original Killer came out. She's the niece of a good mate of mine called Barnsley, who's actually the guy responsible for the smiley face being the image of Acid House.
Okay.
Because he designed Bomb the Bass's record sleeve.
Yeah, Tim.
With the smiley face that he took from the Watchmen.
Okay.
And then ID used it.
Was that before Shum?
Yeah, that was like 86 or 87.
Okay.
And then what happened was Barnsley was selling T-shirts at a Mutoid Waste party. Mutoid Waste used to put on. They used to put on these big warehouse
parties,
dues.
yeah, epic,
and
mate.
the music was pretty much hip hop. And then, like everyone and everything else, they kind of went acid house.
But they went acid house a little bit late though, didn't they? They didn't jump in it straight away.
Well, it was
because
not straight away. It was,
because that allowed us.
88.
Yeah, because that allowed us other promoters. Because if the Mutoid boys were just doing it from day one and didn't stop, you know, they would have been the top firm without a shadow of a doubt. But
yeah, well, because they had all the
they had all the props, they had the
too,
creativity.
I went to one of their parties.
They transformed the venues, didn't they?
Under the Westway.
Yeah, especially that venue. I've been there.
Fantastic.
It
was a great party. Yeah. The music was, it was predominantly hip hop and stuff that was around, you know. But it was great. But it wasn't.
No, it's still great. But we were lucky that Mutoid kept that eclectic mix because
they didn't latch onto it.
Yeah, because where people they just wanted to hear acid house, they didn't really want to hear hip hop but. So we were lucky.
They had a do in Kentish Town in the old post office. Or post office headquarters. They squatted like the North London sorting centre or something that I guess it was disused, and they took it over and had a party in there. And I performed there with my Project Discord Datcord, and their DJ there actually were playing like punk and stuff you couldn't even dance to. And we came on, did our we were a sort of cross between the Beastie Boys and Zig Zig Sputnik. That was kind of, and we came on and we were on one of their big sculptures, like a truck turned into a fire-breathing skeleton, dinosaur skeleton made out of like spanners or something. And we got booed off because their crowd were like crusty squat.
Well, that was my point. They were a slightly different crowd from us.
But they had this one in King's Cross that was in '88, and the music was acid. And Barnsley was selling Smiley T-shirts there, or wearing them. And Danny Rampling was there and saw the Smiley and thought of the connotations, and maybe asked Barnsley if could sell the T-shirts at Shum or something. But it's because of Barnsley and his visionary aesthetical skills with fashion and styling, and he's a really good mate of mine still.
Wow, dude, actually. That's interesting.
The smiley face is him, and he doesn't really get the credit for it. The smiley was invented by some American in the 70s, but he revived it and made it become the emblem.
Well, and they give Danny Rampling the credit for it now, don't they? They actually give the credit to Danny, and they say it was Danny that brought in the smiley face.
He got it from Barnsley. I'm sure Danny would be the first to admit that Barnsley, it came from Barnsley's idea. Anyway, Barnsley's niece, Hannah, she was singing like a couple of years ago. She was touring with Primal Scream and stuff, doing backing vocals, and she did some duet with Bobby Gillespie and stuff. She's like a young rock chick. She likes all this like punk rock and glam rock and stuff from before she was born, even from when I was a kid. But she wasn't born when Killer was out. You know, she's like 22 or 23 now, and she's sung a version, and I made it. You know, I went back to my like little punk rock, do it in the bedroom roots again, and I'm playing bad guitar on it, sort of out of tune, and she's screaming it a bit. And there's that version. There's on there. There's another version with this guy Theo Zero, with some rap from Mickey Blanco, who's a wicked US rapper from, I think she's from LA. From New York, is she? No, I don't know. But she had a track called Wavy about 7 years ago, and I always wanted to work with her. And then it turns out like she's like staying with Theo Zero while she was visiting London, and Theo's like, and Theo's dad was the drummer in the Stone Roses.
Wow,
and also
dude. So many connections.
I know. Also, he was the drummer for Rebel MC, who's now Congo Natty, who's a mate of mine who I've like used to see on the rave scene.
Yeah, Mike West. Yeah,
the same billing. You know, and he was Rebel MC, and now he's Congo Natty, like the sort of godfather of jungle or whatever they call him. But I still see him around in Ramsgate and stuff. But
sure.
But
so yeah, go on, carry on, because you're the remixes.
Yeah, Theo, they're not remixes. I must emphasize.
Oh, sorry.
They're remakes.
Remakes. Oh, you've totally remade them.
Totally remade them. I still got the same old synth with the same old sounds, but I re-recorded and rebuilt everything to give them, you know, an upcycling. It's an upcycle. They're upcycled. They've all got the same original message, but a new message as well. As I said, George's one is the environmental one. Nina Hagen's one is like the kind of I'm a vegan. I'm a passionate vegan, so it's got the freedom for not just the people but for the animals. You know.
Yeah. Because I did notice one thing. I did notice of recent times was you was DJing in that pink boat at the Extinction Rebellion. Demo. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, in the middle of Oxford Street.
Yeah, you were in the middle of Oxford Street in a big pink boat.
As experiences go, and as being proud of things go, that's up there with playing the opening of Amnesia in '89 and playing at Energy at West Film Studios, and you know,
which means that was a pivotal moment in your life, basically. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and how surreal, like it was like what, Monday afternoon, and I'm in a pink boat in the middle of Oxford Circus. Like you had to wait for the police, you know, a gap, because the police were like arresting people and ungluing them from the base of the boat thing, the stand that
because this pink boat was part of this massive protest that was like, you know, the countrywide. People were, you know, handcuffing themselves and chaining themselves to different things. So in effect, people are taking over the street, and there was this pink boat in the middle of an Oxford Street, and there was our boy Adam. God, son.
Well, people still aren't taking that stuff seriously. They'll take the piss out of Greta Thunberg, the teenager who's been, you know, advocating like environmental issues. I'll get quotes off because I'm not very. I'm sorry, I've got the pen again.
You can have the pen. It's just clicking it. It's just clicking it. That's
okay,
all.
Don't click it.
Yeah.
I'm working on a best of, but my own best of, not like things I've done that have been more commercially successful necessarily, just my own personal favorites of my 4 decades being a bedroom music maker. So I'm doing that for like probably springtime. Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here, mate.
There was a weird noise just then. I think.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, but so I'm working on that, and it's going to include obscure things, probably things that weren't even ever released. That's going to be my next thing. But
excellent.
Also, Killer, Free to Kill Again is available now. There's a video with the Theo Zero featuring Mickey Blanco version. That version is called Painkiller. There's an instrumental version called Lady Killer, which is a whole different, it's got the same bass line and some of the same sounds, but it's kind of a complete refresh, update, different version, instrumental. Then there's the version with Boy George made with Adrian Sherwood. There's also a video for that. Sam. So you can go on YouTube, look for Free
I'll put the videos on the page as well. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll put all the resources you've mentioned. I'll add them all onto your page.
There's 2 videos. There would have been more had it not been for the pandemic.
Sure.
There's also a video for one of the versions of Re-Energize, maybe 2. There's all those, they're all available to buy or just listen to for free on Spotify like everyone else. Why would you go and buy them now? Like my daughters, who are 19 and 29,
wow,
neither of them has ever bought any music in their life.
Bizarre, isn't it?
Ever.
Mate?
And they're like,
nuts.
why would you buy it?
That's nuts. I mean, it was such a pleasure to go to a record shop and buy music, wasn't it? Buy that vinyl.
I still do.
Yeah,
I still do. But I must say, I really, really do love like surfing YouTube, and I love Spotify. I love making playlists on Spotify and have the algorithm play back my playlists in an order that as a DJ I would never have thought of. And I think that algorithm, which is just a load of digits in cyberspace,
zeros and ones,
is a better DJ than anybody out there. It's a better DJ than Alfredo or Frankie Knuckles or Francois.
Well, that's where we are.
Really.
AI, no, of course not.
Yeah, I'm joking, but I do enjoy the new technology, but I like going to a flea market and rifling through old vinyls in
Me too, dude.
Austria too. It's inspiring. And
mate, I tell you what,
I've
Adam,
gone around the world.
You are inspiring, mate, and you have been an inspiration to a hell of a lot of people. And I am so glad that I was and thousands of people that were part of your journey, that we were able to come along for the ride with you, mate. And as I said, there was a lot of influences that came from all around the world, but you were our guy. You took on board all those influences that came, and then you made your own songs. And those songs directly reflected the mood of the entire country at that time. And so when we heard them, they were just as important to us. You was just as important to us as Derek May, Joe Smooth, or any of those other cats. You were just important to this whole movement than any one of those chaps. And it's just been an absolute pleasure to reconnect with you once again.
Thank you, Wayne.
And, that's coming from the heart.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to reconnect with you once again. And I honestly wish you so much luck with this, with the redos of the Killers and anything else you do, because you really deserve, so many good things to come in your way, brother.
Thank you so much, Wayne. It's been really fun.
It's been fun, mate. It's been such a pleasure.
I'm so glad our paths crossed back then and then again now.
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to reading your book. I've only just started reading all the books about that era.
Yeah.
During
because
lockdown.
we were all living it, wasn't we? So
yeah, we were living it. I didn't really need to read it, but now I'm enjoying reading a lot of stuff during lockdown. Not only stuff about acid house, but all sorts of other things.
Totally, mate. Yeah,
it's a
good time.
Reading.
Yeah, it's a good time to catch
reading.
up.
Maybe I'm old school in that sense too, that I actually like reading.
Yeah, I mean, it's audio books now, mate.
Music.
It's audio books now.
Yeah, why would you have books? Why would you have records? Like,
yeah.
actually, the last project I did, which is this box set called Revolt on 10 vinyls. I did stuff with Congo Natty, Lee Scratch Perry.
Wow, dude. Very
Asia
cool.
Argento, the Italian actress, various people on the David McCollman, the brilliant British soul voice. I did this thing called Revolt, and some of the people involved were like 18, 19, these singers. And I gave them a vinyl to say, here's your vinyl, you know, thanks. And they were like, what is that?
What am I going to do with this?
They just left it they were in the car, you know, we were going to some interview or something, and they just left it in the car. They just probably thought it's just like a flyer or something.
How funny.
I know.
At least you got to keep them, though.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know.
But look, I'll let you go, brother. Listen, again, you're live and direct from Vienna. You know, you're living in Vienna nowadays, and we really hope that, you know, the city recovers in the best way it can.
Hence my very typical Austrian cupboard.
The heroes are alive, mate.
And the beams on the roof. Yeah, I'm living inside a cuckoo clock. And I can't be asked. I'm a very lazy cuckoo, but I should be on the hour every hour. Like,
the wife will get you out there. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, I'm wearing my Sesame Street Big Bird outfit, just popping out on the veranda and telling all the neighbours what time it is.
Excellent.
But hey, Adam, kids, what time is it?
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Loads and loads of love. I want to thanks for your time once again. And we'll definitely do this again. Yeah, we'll definitely do this again, mate. I will do, definitely. Okay. And I'll give you a call in a couple of days, yeah?
All right, mate.
Listen, mate, loads of love, mate. It's lovely to see you, mate. See you soon. Big love, dude. Take care. Loads of love to the wife, yeah? All right, mate. Take care now.
Do you think it's anything to do with a certain religion, do you think?
No,
is it anything like that?
No, it's more to do with a kind of a drug, isn't it? It's a drug.
Yeah, well, those that take it ought to be ashamed of themselves.
According to The Sun, there were thousands of empty ecstasy wrappers littering the floor of the 250-foot-long hangar.
Drugs, sex, sensation.
Some newspapers have called acid house music a sinister and evil cult which lures young people into drug taking. The message is certainly getting across.
The organisers kept the location secret until the very last moment, which was the main reason, according to the papers, why there were so few police here and they were unable to act.
Drug-crazed kids, some as young as 12, boogied for 8 hours yesterday at Britain's biggest ever ecstasy bash.
The party took place here, infiltrated by reporters from the Mail and the Sun.
There's meant to be a drugs-related craze.
What do you know about acid house music?
It must affect the brain in some way.
Unless it's just the music that does it.
All them lights flashing don't do you any good either, do it? I wouldn't even go in the pub where them lights are.
Oh, no,
they drive you mad, don't